Alright, new patch, new character, so you know what that means. It's time to take a look at where they've landed on the tier list. Here we are again in Pridewin.gg, taking a look at those trusted tier lists in the Wuthering Waves community, at least on the EN side of things, right? We're here taking a look at the patch 2.3 tier list for Tower of Adversity, and the main reason why we're here is because of Zani, of course. We will take a look at where she landed in Whimpering Wastes in just a second here, but I first wanted to start it off like I usually do with the character itself. There's a lot to unpack with the character. There's a lot of concerns that people have with the character as well, going over her weapon, how big of a jump in damage it is for her, whether it's even necessary, her team compositions that she works well with, etc, etc. First, if you like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help out. We just hit 10K and we stay on that grind. Now, real quick, I just wanted to say that my voice still sounds really bad. I'm still really sick. I just got back from a trip. I apologize for that. We're just gonna have to deal with it. So Zani, she's out. She's strong. How strong? Really, really strong. And I just wanted to point out something really weird about tier 0 I just noticed with the DPS slot. Do you guys think we have enough Spectro characters for the DPS slot yet? I'm not sure. Do you got no, look, there's a Glacio here. I think we need some more. There's too many Glacios in tier 0. Dude, what the heck is this? Okay, the only tier 0 support characters are Spectro. Okay, we just got a tier 0 hybrid character in the form of Phoebe because she can act as the hybrid supportive style like sub DPS to Zani. What? Anyways, Kuro's new favorite element aside, Zani is incredibly powerful, but is she the best DPS in the game right now? I don't think we should be trying to make that decision right now on day 1. Everything is catering to her, bro, okay? I want to wait until Tower isn't catering to this character. I want to wait until, like, things sort of die down and the anniversary hype sort of goes away and we can kind of, like, get a little bit more of a feel of how she will play going forward. But here's where we get into some of the more nitty-gritty with Zani. The more important stuff, okay? If you are not pairing Zani with Phoebe, just forget about that best DPS slot, okay? Because she will not be able to do it without Phoebe. Those are simply facts. The argument's gonna be, oh, if you don't have Phoebe, just use Spectro Rover, stupid. Well, yeah, that's like the only other option you have, right? And yeah, sure, everybody has that option because it's Rover, but here's the problem. Rover's frazzle buildup is not significant enough to properly boost up Zani. She just needs more stacks, and unfortunately, she's not going to be getting them consistently enough from Rover. You could have like the best Rover in the world, it still wouldn't be enough. And that's the other thing. You could use an incredibly high-powered, well-built Rover and still work. It could still clear, it could still get the job done. Or you could use a Phoebe that you pulled from a bus stop in Tijuana, Mexico, okay? Then you could go to a random dumpster, pull out the first set of moonlit clouds that you can, throw all of that together in a scrambler, put that in the blender, and then throw them with Zani, and it'll work just as good, if not better than your super high-powered Rover. There's a huge difference here. In short, a low-investment Zani Phoebe team can actually be better and far easier and more comfy to use than a high-investment Zani and Rover team. But don't get it twisted. Even though Phoebe is getting a rerun, that is still an investment in itself having to pull another character. So you can just run your budget Zani and Rover. Just be prepared for the fact that it is gonna probably be a little bit of FOMO compared to using a Phoebe team. All right, so let's go ahead and do some weapon comparing and go over the actual weapon situation with Zani, because unfortunately there is a weapon situation. Of course, Abyss Surges is the baseline for her, but let's talk about the situation with the signature here, because Phoebe is the factor with the weapon. All right, so let's go ahead and use their wording here for us. So how much stronger this weapon is compared to other options depends on how many other sources of Frazzle Amplify you have access to. For example, while Phoebe's 100% Frazzle Amplify is active, the value of this weapon is diminished due to dilution, but without it, it becomes far more potent. So in a very weird twist, This weapon is actually better without Phoebe in terms of its own personal performance. Your team performance will still be better having Phoebe on the team, but the weapon performance won't be. And this is basically because Phoebe provides so much frazzle amplify that it's essentially overkill. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, I guess you could say. So this top number here of 137.12, that's without having Phoebe on the team, and the 125.10 is while you have Phoebe on the team. It is still a significant increase in damage no matter how you slice it, brother. I mean, bro, you got over 48% crit damage, you have attack stat of 587, increases attack by 12%, casting a basic attack grants the following effects. Yeah, that's kinda easy to trigger. Basic attack. Anyways, dealing damage ignores 8% of the target's defense and amplifies spectral frazzle damage dealt by 50% for 6 seconds. That's basically always gonna be active most of the time. And unfortunately for Zani, you don't have a ton of other options. Here's Abyss Surges. Everybody should be able to get their hands on this, right? Unfortunately though, it doesn't have a nice crit stat. You really like to see crit stats. That's why crit stats are on basically every single weapon they've ever made. Without Abyss Surges, if you go down to the 4 stars, not a whole lot of really good options, to be perfectly honest with you here. I would probably stick with Abyss Surges if you have nothing else. I think a lot of people picked up Verity's Handle because this was Zhengli Yao's signature weapon, and he came out for free, dude, in 1.2. A lot of people had plenty of pulls around that time and picked this bad boy up. It has a crit rate stat of 24.3%, nice solid stat. Good stat stick, 587% attack. This is a good weapon at the end of the day. Not the best weapon for her, but definitely an improvement upon Abyss Surges, and it makes it easier to build the character because it has a crit stat. Now, if we go over here to Tragic Comedy, Rochia's signature weapon, it also has some crit on it. It's a good solid weapon. This increases attack by 12% every time basic attack or intro skill is cast. Heavy attack damage increases by 48% for 3 seconds. This is a similar condition to her signature. It doesn't have the same buff, obviously, but obviously Rochia's weapon really good on Zani, despite not actually being built for her specifically. Now, similar to Brandt, unfortunately, this weapon's not going to be that great on other characters. Just look at this line right here. Amplifies Spectro Frazzle damage dealt by 50% for 6 seconds. That is very specific to a certain element and doesn't help any others. Weapons in Wuthering Wave are unfortunately starting to become a bit stronger, however, they're also starting to become a bit more specific. Not everything can be String Master after all. Now, this one might sting for some people too. We're going to go ahead and go over the teams now. Despite having some decent synergy in the game, it's only with a couple of characters, okay? We have the best team, which is with Phoebe, of course, acting as the hybrid sub-DPS character. And then you have the no Phoebe team, which basically uses Mortifi or Shorekeeper in place of Phoebe, and you basically have to use Rover. There's no other way to get around it. You got to use Rover as sort of your supportive style character. And so, yeah, that's it. That's all that they're providing here, because there's not a whole lot of options, because Zani unfortunately does want a lot of Spectral Frazzle stacks, and there's not a lot of sources for that. So for anyone curious for why Mortifi was included, Mortifi in Zani teams acts as a substitute for Phoebe's buffing effects, but unfortunately doesn't apply any Spectral Frazzle. To compensate for this, Mortifi with Zani must be paired with Spectral Rover, but under these conditions the team can work just fine and is able to clear endgame content without any issues. So the trio is definitely usable for free-to-play accounts. Unfortunately, unless you, if some people just actually don't have a Sequence 6 Mortifi, I think most people by this time do if they've been playing for a long period of time, but if you don't have a proper Mortifi to use or a proper Phoebe, bro, are you using a Shorekeeper? Because then you're going to probably have to switch up your Rover's kit as well. Oh, sorry, not her kit, her gear as well. And then you're running her as the hybrid now. And then So, I mean, there are options here, but there's not a whole lot of team setups for Zani that work really, really well and synergetic right now. For a lot of players, they might not care about this. They either already have Phoebe, they're going to get her on her rerun, or they already have a strong Mortifi, etc., etc., and so this stuff doesn't necessarily become a problem for them. But some other players might not feel that way. Some players are more casual, and they might want to pull Zani just because they like the character, and then when they pull her, all of a sudden have this problem they have to deal with of how to properly build her teams, etc. So there are a lot of factors that have caused people to either be disappointed with Zani, or they expected more, or they feel like she's even potentially not a good character. And I wanted to discuss that in just a sec here, but first, in terms of echo building and whatnot, it's actually pretty easy. You go with Eternal Radiance. You have, of course, your main echoes in Capitanes. He's the new one, and then Nightmare Morning Awe. You have crit damage, crit rate for your main stat, Spectro, attack. It's pretty straightforward. Here are some substats on screen if you felt so inclined to take a look at that stuff. I'm kind of speed running through this because I do feel like building her itself is the easier part. It's the teams and other things that are more important. You can pause, take a look at certain things if you care to. Here's a priority list for your skills. Forte Circuit, Res Liberation, Res Skill, Intro Skill, Basic Attack, you get the picture. And here's a standard rotation in case you were curious. You could also just go ahead and click the link to Pridewind's website in the description. So is Zani good character design? I've already been asked this by a few different people, and in short, I mean, just look at her. That ass is like the best thing in the entire game. I mean, it goes hard. Boing. But the question really being asked, is Zani a good character combat design? And I have to say, I think she's fine. I don't think every character should be like Carlotta, where Carlotta is just so brain-dead easy to use. Her best character pairing in the game has been around for most of the game's lifespan. Plenty of players have them. If they didn't, they can pick her up on the rerun, which already happened. It's all worked itself out. Carlotta, incredibly easy to use, incredibly powerful. The results are there. Very, very strong character, but easy at the same time. I think that some of the best characters in the game should have some difficulty to them, or something that you have to figure out, almost like a little bit of a puzzle, and then once you figure it out and everything's firing off, the payoff is really, really huge. I like characters like that make you have to work just a little bit harder. The thing is, Zani's not really hard to use. She's just a bit more limited in terms of her teams and how you have to set the character up in terms of building them, etc. Because, bro, Zani with Phoebe is one of the best, character pairings you can have. It might even be in the running for best DPS in the game. We'll be comparing Zani with Carlotta once we get a more fair endgame rotation that doesn't cater so heavily to specifically one of those characters, right? So I don't think it's a bad character design. I just think it's a limited character design. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you don't have Phoebe, it kind of feels bad, but, it can still work. You're just more limited, right? But bro, look at Gian. If Gian doesn't have Mortifi, that doesn't feel too good, does it? You know what I mean? Now, to be fair, Mortifi is more accessible than a character like Phoebe is, but I think you get my point. Once you start removing some of the best in-game characters' best-in-slot teammates, they start to fall off too, and you start to realize that a lot of characters are a bit more limited than you would have necessarily thought. In case you guys were curious, for Whimpering Wastes, Zani landed at tier 0.5, which is rather respectable, bro. Rather respectable. And the other additions to the list, of course, are just characters being brought in with another alternative slot, like Phoebe as a tier 0, a hybrid-style sub-DPS character. You see Don Jin being given the expert tag, and as well a tier 1.5. Of course, if you play her at expert level, she can be played as a tier 1, and so she gets 2 slots on the list now too. Just stuff like that. Anyways, you guys let me know if you ended up pulling Zani. Let me know what you feel about the list. Let me know what you feel about the weapon situation, team situation, etc., etc. Then I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.